Bonjour tout le monde, good morning, and thank you for coming today. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ray Hessian, and I've got the honor of leading a team of really smart and intelligent people at AWS who focus on our Canadian national security and defense customers. So I love my job because my customers are also super cool, very intelligent, and have major challenges that need solving. And we're looking forward to working with them through that modernization and transformation of the Canadian government's defense and national security. But I've got the pleasure today of welcoming two of our guests who've joined us from the United Kingdom. The first is Liam Maxwell. Liam is the Director of Government Transformation at AWS. Liam leads a group of AWS that is a team of experienced head of government practitioners. And they help our executive customers lead and adapt new business models and meet citizen needs. They take control of their technology and build a sustainable and world-class public service, leveraging the cloud. Joining Liam this morning is Philippa Manley, and Philippa is the Director of Projects and Digital Services at Her Majesty's Passport Office in the United Kingdom. Philippa is responsible for delivering and optimizing Her Majesty's Passport Office digital services through projects, suppliers, and building internal capability. Philippa has led the successful delivery of the digital passport application, including digital photos, online authentication, but I'll let her share the rest of that story with you. And with that, Liam and Philippa, welcome on stage.
Ray.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great morning.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ray. Thank you for having us today. We're really keen to have an interactive session, so if we can go through this quite quickly, we're very open to questions and answers. As Ray explained, I'm Liam Maxwell. I'm the Director of Government Transformation at AWS, and I lead a team of experts, really, people who've delivered nation-scale reform in digital services around the world. So from Argentina through to Singapore, through to India, through to the United Kingdom, we've taken and built a team based around people who really understand and have delivered nation-scale reforms to public services. And the team's aim is to help those operational leaders accelerate their reforms so that they can make sure that they can focus on the really important functions of changing their services, but also we help with all of the components of helping them through navigate their own systems. And for everybody, this is a journey. So it's never really fully completed. There's always something to do, and as many as you may recognize, it hardly ever starts with a green field. We've got to start working together, and that's one of the reasons I'm so keen and so happy that Philip is here with me today, because I'm going to talk a little bit now about the theory and the things to get in place, but most importantly, Philip is going to talk about what actually happens when the rubber hits the road, when you actually have to do this within a place. So we tried to think and condense these things into three areas, three reasons and three things about transformation in government that are common, which if you can focus on, you can start to get moving. The first thing is trust. Citizens need to be able to trust the public services to deliver and to be there for them. We need to build around the users, around the citizens, so that the services work for the people that are using them, not for the organizations and the administrations that are putting them together. So much of the delivery of public services was previously designed and put together in the image of the departments and the organizations that were doing it, and not in terms of the citizens. And the great freedom that digital transformation brings is the ability to build services around people. And then also some tips and some common components around delivery. How to get things moving, how to get that momentum behind what you're doing. So, firstly, let's just have a look at some successes, some things that did work. And we learned a huge amount during COVID. My team works all the way around the world, so we're spotting What do we have and what good examples are they? So good early example, New South Wales pathology, helping move into using messaging to help people get their results for their tests back, but also leveraging Connect, the call center service, which enables them to start building and running call center services dynamically, quickly, effectively. As you can see at the bottom, in a time of great nervousness and great uncertainty, moving away from phone messaging into using SMS meant that we could actually take down the time that people spent worrying about their test results. Rhode Island, another great example of when a change happened. When the pandemic started, people started to need to claim their unemployment benefit or claim benefits from their states all the way around the world. Rhode Island had a 30-year-old COBOL system, which was obviously creaking at the seams anyway. With the increased demand, found it really challenging to move forward. So by leveraging call center technology as well, but then moving to modernization of their infrastructure, it meant they could move to deal with hundreds of thousands of calls in a week, as opposed to hundreds of thousands of calls every 2 months or so. It was a huge change, and that capacity change that was capable by leveraging cloud meant that they could start to move forward. And then two other examples. I love this picture of Cagliari on the left in Sardinia. Imagine taking a local government with very old-fashioned, old-style technology where everybody had to be in the office and in 1 week having to move remotely. Or taking a school system and having to move everybody remote in 1 week. That was the challenge that was faced by the Italians here. And by using workspaces and by using the ability to remote into services, using your own IT from home, that helped create a secure and effective delivery of government services. And also using a really powerful edtech called BSmart, moving 30% of the population's schools online in a very short period of time meant, in under 2 weeks, meant that the Italian education system could flex and work at that point. Now, those are great examples of how change happens, and change can happen quickly if you're prepared. Let's just talk a little bit about scale. In India, things are at a different level of scale. And so helping ride through the Indian vaccination process was a huge change. It required transformative technology, but it also meant changing the way that people operated. And the challenges that people the people were facing at this point was, how do you start to vaccinate 25 million people a day and record it and get it right? And so that's why this and these numbers are so important. It's the Indian way of calculating numbers there, of showing them with the commas, but it's 1.4 billion. Think about that, 1.4 billion registrations over a period of time. The scale at which you need to operate suddenly becomes absolutely enormous. So you need to have access to the common capabilities and the common services to enable you to build those things that can scale. And that's why transformation relies on the cloud so highly. So 4 drivers behind this. 1, get a big vision. 2, clear benefits. 3, you're going to need to get executive buy-in to help it work. And 4, keep going. So what is the big idea? I've put 4 of those up here today. Digital by default, the UK approach. Philip will talk a little bit about that. Time, you may remember when the American healthcare system ran into a huge problem. There was a huge convening, a huge executive push behind making that and making healthcare.gov work. Aadhaar is the identity fundamental for India, hugely transformative, but involved putting together a really bold vision for the country. And DIA is something you probably haven't heard of, but is the main citizen app that is proposed and being used by the government of Ukraine at the moment. And that's a huge change. Moving citizen services, all of them, into the smartphone is a huge vision, which they're making great progress on. What are the benefits? Well, you do save money, but also you get the ability to get agile approaches to your work, which means that you can work quickly, you can work more effectively, but also use those examples where you can get security to increase your security as you go through this process. And what we're talking about here really is the ability to take these 4 components of what makes up government IT, ERP, common infrastructure, mission tech, being able to use the services and the services for civil servants and operators, and then digital services, the services that face outwards, and actually make use of and use more of the common infrastructure. That is the thing which helps you drive your transformation, because rather than relying and building and running and making your own common infrastructure, that's already been done for you. Leverage the common infrastructure that's available in the cloud, and that means that you can start to focus your determinant and focus your transformation higher up the stack. And you'll know that we've actually started to change the way the operations and the abilities of common services and self-services to help you move forward and move faster. And that's why several years ago, a whole group of our AI and ML services were released, which enable you to start building services there just using the common services, the common components, the common capabilities, rather than having to go and build your own components yourself. So moving up the stack is one of the things which really helps you build and work and run more effectively. Also, digital transformation means you can start to generate clear benefits, not just from procuring things more quickly and more effectively, but also procuring from the best people in the market. And so by moving and having a focus on leveraging the ability to use companies that leverage the cloud to deliver services, that's a fundamental part of the acceleration that you can achieve. The old prime model of running through one common integrator who then held all the data centers and held everything and put it together, that model changed. We managed to change that radically in the United Kingdom and leverage the innovation that was available in the market. But to do that, we had to change the way we bought things. We had to buy from the most innovative, and that meant buying from people who were using the cloud. The economic benefits of that are really quite strong. And just to show you how the supply chain I ran changed, this is the supply chain in 2010, 2015, huge number of small businesses, medium businesses that were growing and using cloud services to deliver services to government. It created a whole new sector, a GovTech sector in the economy. And what was behind that? Well, actually, one of the core components behind that was being able to take that idea of moving to a more secure environment. And what we thought by an idea, just to be joined on stage by a moment, not by myself, but someone who really developed this, was a way of changing the classification of security to make it more permissive. And that's the way and the work that was done by the National Cybersecurity Centre.
These challenges I was deeply involved with was probably the wholesale reform, how we think about security classifications. And despite the name, the work wasn't so much about the actual classification that was assigned to the document or to an object, but it was much more about reforming and changing how we approach security so that it can enable government to make much better use of contemporary technologies.
So what we did there, working with NCSC, was to move our security classification to something more modern, more effective. This was a fundamental reform. We moved from multiple layers of security classification to a very simple model of security classification, where instead of having different layers for different parts of the central government, we said, look, let's just do this all properly. In effect, what we did was we raised the bar of all of our security so that all government data will be treated properly, will be treated at the best levels of industry standards. That the confusion that you had of different levels between different departments would go away because you treat everything properly at the right level of security. That reform meant that every time we introduced a new service, we would make things more secure. And the key to that was actually in 2013, we moved to the cloud. So the move to public cloud meant that we could deliver much better security postures to our customers in government. It meant that we were able to deliver really much stronger services. And just to give you a quote from the Ministry of Defence, that's really the main change, which meant people could start moving and start running faster. And for those of you that are trying to deliver reforms and trying to deliver change within public services, do please use that as a quote that can help you with your move, because you do actually increase your security posture if you move that way. Top-level buy-in always helps. I'll give you some examples across the world of some of the top-level buy-in which has helped move programs forward. UK, digital by default. Australia, setting up the Digital Transformation Agency. I mentioned about the States and the use of healthcare.gov as a forming process. Nandan Nilekani is the man above the Aadhaar sticker. He was the cabinet minister appointed to drive through change in the Indian system. President Macri from Argentina, a country that successfully introduced an ID system in only 4 years. You'll know of Estonia and the e-Estonia program, which is driven primarily from each of their heads of state. And it's really amazing to have a really strong head of state who understands the technology behind it. And then on the right-hand side, the changes that Ukraine are bringing now to their systems. The flexibility is something which had to be enforced. Is actually fascinating in how they're growing and building their services and running a citizen-centered service for a country whose citizens are now spread out far beyond the realms of their country. And once you've got that in place, the next thing you need is forward movement. And being able to go forward needs new disciplines, which Philippa's going to talk a bit about, but also needs you to keep that momentum going. But some of the new disciplines you will need are things like user centricity, being able to work on the user need. Design services, where you're putting together multidisciplinary teams that use things like content design as the core design process. Remember, it's not how things look most of the time, it's how people read things. The content is so important. And then service design, so you build your services for users. Often we build things and people build things that work for us, and we think that's a great idea. Actually, you find, in the same way that when people build parks, citizens create desire paths about where they want to walk. That's the same thing you should keep in mind as you build digital services. And then use multidisciplinary teams and really rejoice in the fact that you can use multidisciplinary teams. It is not about just the technology. It's about building services that work for people. So you have to have all components of the service involved in that. And then talk about it. This was the way that the UK started their programs. They had a petition on site, which was the simplest way of building a service in a new way. Talk about it, be transparent, move to a digital transformation program, which is very transparent about how it worked and the things that worked and the things that didn't work. That's really empowering for civil servants throughout the organizations they work in, because they know that they can take risks, they can make mistakes, and use those to get them right. So that transparency really works. And one of the most powerful things we did was we put a set of iPads in number 10 Downing Street to make sure that they could look at the services as they were running and identify which ones worked, which ones weren't working. And then share. There are lots of governments around the world now who are driving digital transformation. My team at AWS goes and works with teams in about 60 countries around the world. The big thing is, as governments and as public servants, you don't have competition. You can share. You can embrace open source as a way of going faster because you can share solutions that other governments have used. So there's a webpage called Open Government Solutions. I commend it to you. Go and have a look at it. We've curated the solutions, the code, the policies, the reform programs that have worked successfully in other governments and catalogue them there. So you can start to see what works and what doesn't. And then just to say another thing, speed does deliver if you make it work properly. You can go at a very rapid speed. I'm very privileged that I worked with the Ukrainian government to help move them into the cloud in the aftermath of the invasion. And we moved 28 government departments over in this period of about 60 days. One of them, we moved a bank. There was a bank that moved into the cloud in 45 days. That's the main bank that runs most of the services for 40% of citizens in the Ukraine. So you can go really fast if you take that determination and move forward. There will be things that get in your way. These were the 4 things that got in our way in the UK. Capability, hiring people to make them work, help bring them in. Legacy systems, how to deal with the legacy that you've got in place, and Philippa's going to talk a bit about that. Procurement, we've talked a little bit about, but opening up procurement and making sure you can get the best. And then security. Every decision you make should make things more secure for your citizens. You should be continually raising the bar, and that's why using capabilities such as cloud can help that work. And that creates a flywheel effect where you get better delivery, cost savings, better experience. Those things can all work in tandem if you do it using that way. So just to help you with that, I've mentioned some tools there. My team helps advise leaders in how to get moving. Please do take advantage of us. we go and advise this, and we've got huge numbers of examples around the world where things have worked and where they haven't worked, and we're very keen to share them. We run an executive education program so that senior leaders can get their teams into the same groove, into the same understanding, so you can help align all of your approaches. I mentioned our open source components before as well, so we can help with those components through there. So that's a set of services AWS has, and that's quite a lot of theory. What we thought would be really helpful was for you to see in practice what happens, and for me to get off the soapbox of what we should do to actually what happens when you really do need to do something. And Philippa is the expert at that. So I'm going to hand over now to Philippa, who runs the passport service and CIO for the passport service in the UK, for a really good example of what happens when you start moving through this reform journey. Remember, all of that theory was fine. Philippa had to, as we say, fix the car wheel whilst the car was still moving. That's the challenge, and I'm sure it's the challenge that you face as well. So I hope it's a good example for you. Thanks.
There we are. Thank you, Liam. I still actually have the grease on my hands from that car wheel change in motion, as you mentioned. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having us here today. As Liam said, I'm Philippa Manley. I look after digital services and projects for Her Majesty's Passport Office in the UK. What that means is that I was responsible for and continue to be responsible for our digital transformation. And I'm here because I hope we have a good story to tell. It remains to be seen whether it's the success in practice that Liam has set me up for. We will see. But we're doing okay, I think. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of that with you. So first of all, passports. Well, HMPO, Her Majesty's Passport Office, we are the sole issuer of passports to British citizens from in the UK and overseas. And in a typical year, we get 6 to 7 million applications, and we deliver the vast majority of those to citizens. New passports hit the post box, hit the front door within 3 weeks. We're also responsible for civil registration in England and Wales. So that's the registration of births, marriages and deaths and the certificates that come from that. But today I'm talking about passports specifically, but when we look at what we're going to do next, you'll see why that organisational structure and relationship to civil registration service is important. So let's think about why we had to do digital transformation in the first place. To do that, I really need to think back almost a decade, and particularly probably what happened in 2014. And in 2014, the passport service in the UK was woefully unprepared, really, for a surge in demand. And also, we had a situation where we had had multiple years of creaking technology and business processes that were wearing slightly thin. Everything was very paper-based. It was very slow and expensive for the citizen, and also very expensive for us to provide. If you think about how it was 6, 7, 8 years ago, to apply for a passport, you had to go and find an application pack, quite a substantial envelope with a notes for guidance page of 26 pages. You had to be able to read and then understand the information, and then you had to set about filling out the application form, trying to get the right information in the right place in this generic application form for all application types. You had to make sure you had to try and make sure you sent the right documents. You even had to use the right kind of pen. So as you can imagine, citizens made mistakes and they got very frustrated, and it caused a lot of rework for us and for them. And of course, many of them ended up contacting us, calling us to check, emailing us, and as you can imagine, this was hard work. We experimented with web forms first. I think many services did. It's a step forward, but of course, they're far too static, and our existing systems and processes they're built around paper and manual workflow. They just couldn't keep up. So, we really had to do something, and with what was, frankly, a bit of a media storm and some political scrutiny in 2014 when the customer experience was really quite poor, we're in a position where we had to make a start. When we looked around us, you could see a lot of other government departments, they had the same issues, the same problems, but there wasn't really a lot of different approaches to it. But it was also around the time that Liam mentioned, and the advent of government digital service and digital by default, and we were able to see some small pockets of experimentation. And I think being able to take some small risks in that way at that time was actually what enabled us to get a little momentum and to have some of the success that we've now seen. Now, if you want to do something in government, you want an investment in public services, you're going to need a really good business case, obviously. And we had a case for change, and we knew we needed to do something, and we had a pretty good vision of what we wanted to do, but we had no idea how to execute it. But we did know how to write a good business case, so that's what we got on and did, and started with the outcomes. Always a pretty good place to start. And the outcomes we were looking for, obviously with the benefit of hindsight, but really this is pretty much what we wrote in our business case. We knew our citizens, our customers, whilst they only touched our services once every 10 years, they expected them to be digital. They expected all government services to be available digitally. And for something as important and symbolic as a passport, they really expected a world-class experience. And we knew that because we asked them. Which is an important point, and we'll come to that. We also needed a better understanding of our data, and we already knew it was valuable because other government departments wanted to use our data for their services, but we also needed to leverage it more for ourselves and for the way that we manage applications. And a properly managed digital user experience should give us structured data, clean data, with citizens getting it right first time. And that should, and indeed it has, unlocked the ability to do some automation. And also we had an aging, creaking legacy IT service that we had to replace. And what we set out to do was not only replace the legacy technology, but build some internal capability in the digital and IT space that would enable us to react when we encountered future risks and opportunities. Of course, we knew they would come. And embarking on this involved a major program, significant investment involved. What we call a major program in the UK comes with structure and support, but also a lot of scrutiny and expectation. But because the business case was very positive with multiple hundreds of millions of pounds, we did have a mandate. But as we were setting out on this journey, we knew it was quite big and bold, and we needed to create a space where we could test and learn and get things wrong, actually. And the way we chose to do that was to take an element of our service, and for us that was the online application itself, and create a small team, initially a rainbow team of contractors and civil servants, but very quickly we started to leverage partner services for their expertise and to scale. But this small team were able to do some discovery and design work, early prototypes, and get the first part of our online application live in a really small and controlled way. Plenty of failures, plenty of lessons along the way, but doing this in a small and safe way meant we're able to establish the patterns and the methods that actually have stood us in such good stead ever since. The kind of things I would draw out there are dual running. So you don't need to switch off your legacy service straight away. You can build your new digital service alongside your legacy service. We did. We took on board the cost of integration and the workflow implications of that. And we're still dual running to a degree today, although I'll talk more about that in a moment. And probably the other key pattern at that stage was getting our teams and all parts of the business used to new products, new applications as part of the process that would regularly change. So we're not talking about monthly or quarterly releases here, we're talking about continuous change and integration. Now, I mentioned that we brought on board some partners early on. We had to lean on the experience, and we continue to do that. We went into the market fairly tentatively, and we've experimented with lots of different types of commercial arrangements. The main thing for me is that every single partner engagement includes an element of genuinely developing our own internal capability as well. And it's certainly badges at the door, co-creation, and we continue to work with a variety of partners today. This is reflected in a lot of the work that we did internally, and we invested a lot in organizational design. I believe that actually has been for us as important as the technology itself. And what I mean by that is we spent some time working out what we wanted the organization to look like, and that's the whole organization, certainly not just the technology. What activities we would need to do, how we would group those activities, and the skill sets that we would need to be able to properly deliver them. And we have designed and have now implemented an operating model that is centered around digital service provision. As we have grown and we've built now a full range of products that enable an end-to-end digital service for passports in the UK, we've grouped these products together in what we call product families, where there are shared users or shared technology, for example. And these align very closely with the service elements end-to-end. We get lots of economies of scale that way. We get lots of tech reuse, for example, and we can leverage partner specialisms like security, or we can use shared services, integrating things like GovPay and Notify, etc. But the main thing here is that they all share a common purpose, which is around the service itself. And whilst they have some autonomy to be able to self-organize and work out how they want to operate, they all operate multidisciplinary teams, some of which are blended with civil servants. And two core principles are important all across the Passport Digital Service: user-centric design and agile delivery. And for us, agile delivery really means a dual track. It means continuous discovery and design alongside delivery and integration, often with automated test and release cycles. And what this does is gives our product families, and therefore the end-to-end digital service, properly holistic product roadmaps and backlogs that can respond quickly when faced with risks or opportunities. And from a user-centered design perspective, we've embraced this from both the citizen angle and also from our internal users, the caseworkers who make decisions on passport applications. And really the systematic use of this data, and we have user researchers and content designers permanently embedded in all of our product teams. Systematic use of this data means that we genuinely are having users doing the right thing first time and every time. And what does it look like today? Well, we're over 6 years into the program. It would be remiss of me not to say that it's taken longer and it's more costly than we expected, but it's an almost fully digital service now. We're still working on the fact that we need your old passport back and some other documents. But when you apply for a UK passport, you go online, you enter your own details, and we have tailored instructions for citizens based on the data and information they give us. So we can tell you what information we need, we can tell you what documentation we need based on your individual application. You don't need to know why. You can take your photograph with your own telephone, with your mobile phone, or in fact you could go to a provider, a professional service provider, and use a code that's fully integrated with our service. and you can nominate and have a third party authenticate your identity, all entirely online. And critically, we also have 2 supporting services. One is for tracking, so customers can at any point log on to the tracking service and get a real-time position of where their application is and anything else they might need to do. And we also fully integrated with the government notify service, so we send SMS and emails as applications move through different stages of the process. And guess what? Customers love it. We consistently have 90% plus satisfaction scores and some industry recognition, which is really motivating and great for the product families and our teams. I must say we've twice won the Data and Technology in UK Government Award, and so this is customer-facing product family the first time, and now most recently the casework, the internal-facing product family, and it's Data Next, okay, keep that in mind. And also the IT industry digital transformation project of the year, which is pretty prestigious, and very happy about that. And this is why customers have shifted channel. So we're still running the legacy service, but customers are taking up the digital service from 0 up to 90+% now. And of course, you can imagine the reduction in paper handling costs but also the reduction in calls and emails. Customer contacts have also reduced by 90% over the period. And as I said, we applied this internally as well, the same methods, same approach. So for digital application processing, we designed this as predominantly as a decision engine, actually, on the basis that if we get clean digital data in, we would be able to automate checks. And indeed, we've automated the vast majority of checks now, drawing upon data sources from the Home Office and across government and the private sector. And we've even been able to automate end-to-end decisions for some of the most simple applications. And as you might appreciate, they're also some of the highest volume. And what this means then is as we continue to work with our caseworkers using user research and content design, we will and we are continuing to automate more and more of what were previously manual tasks. And at this point, we have an overall 50% reduction in the average passport examination time. And my teams wouldn't let me get away with saying that all of this is with an automated build pipeline in cloud, releasing multiple times a day across the product set. So just quickly, one word about this year. So, you know, obviously I said 6 to 7 million passports in an average year. March 2020, passport demand obviously dropped through the floor. Within 2 hours, we were able to confirm that we could keep the service running, keep the service operational with engineers, analysts, product service managers working entirely remotely, entirely from home. Now, that kind of stability and going back to the trust element that Liam mentioned earlier meant we could quickly turn our attention to planning for scenarios of when demand returned. And this has meant that our teams have really tested our model, actually. The proximity to the service and the knowledge of the service meant they were able to run scenarios immediately, and they were able to put themselves in a position where they had options for when the inevitable demand returned and when failure scenarios occur, because they do, and they will. For example, we introduced a front-end throttle. This is on the screen here. It's the kind of thing you'd see in concert booking. So we haven't had to use this yet in anger, but if we did see something of that nature, then we could. And it's working well overall. We will see more than 9 million applications this year, but importantly, it's about how they arrive, and it's the peaky nature of that. And we have actually seen some parts of our service see 5 times the volumes that they were designed for. But they're still running. We've been able to service this. And when you look at numbers like the 431,000 logins to tracking in a day, and remember that previously would have been calls or emails, you can understand some of the value there. And in the main, customers have got their passports within advertised timeframe in the UK during this period. We have had some media noise because obviously some of the more complex applications are still running through the legacy service. But given that we are issuing more than 1 million applications a month and the service is stable, in the main, the service is what we would be looking for. And most importantly, we're turning our attention now to making sure next year, when we expect to see more, that we'll be ready for that. We're not finished. There's a lot more to do. I've certainly got a major program to finish. I said it took longer than we intended. But we've delivered far beyond the base case of the business case. Part of what we've got left to do is to deal with the remaining paper. Some citizens will always want to apply a different way to digitally, so that's something that we've got to find the solution for. And also we're working on the integration with civil registration that I mentioned earlier, which will remove the necessity for citizens to provide birth and marriage certificates for passport applications. And our transformed data, we already have a couple of small products that are in use across government and the financial sector. Our transformed data will be of a scale where we can expand that. And in fact, we're looking to enable services like the single government sign-on for government services in the UK. And finally, we're going to continue to refine our approach and reuse it, starting with civil registration transformation, but also being able to share it as we're doing here today. And we've still got more to learn in that way, and that's why I would very much appreciate any of you getting in touch and letting me know your experiences, and if indeed we can share further or anything more to add, please do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippa. I mean, it's amazing to find and just hear so openly and with so much data around how to transform and build a service. But also particularly, and one of the things that I've just find so compelling about Philippa's experience is that dual running, which so many of civil servants need to have to do. Your legacy is always going to be the thing which tries to stop you going faster. Leveraging that and using that in the way you have is a real inspiration. So I think it's a really good exemplar for us. We wanted to do quickly, if there were any questions, or if anyone wanted to ask Philippa a question about the service. We're quite tight for time, so I'm going to look out into the audience, and we have one here. I don't know if we have a mic, so if you shout it to me. Here we go, the mic is arriving. And whilst we're doing that, can I just leave you with this? And then if you can zap the barcodes, we'd really appreciate your feedback on the service and learn the feedback on what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. My question is regarding these political movements of restrictions or embargo, those kind of stuff, okay? If governments, especially those coming from developing countries, decide to embrace AWS, what are the mechanisms in place to avoid things such as lock-in, or they see one day their services are locked out because of political issues?
Yeah. So locking into services is one of the most important things, and one of the things we had to break in the UK, and we have a lot of time, is that lock-in to a particular set of vendors and services. And that's one of the reasons why to be open, using cloud providers, whose entire business model is based on consumption, is an effective way of making sure you move away from that. So you do need to build services so that you can leave them and change the vendor as you go through that. And that is a core component of the way that good government service design works.
I mean, just to add to that, that's why it's so important to me to continue to build internal capability at the same time as leveraging solutions and partnerships. And that's one of the core underpinning approaches to our procurement strategy, and why we continue to go to market and offer, even though we're quite happy with what we have.
Competition is so important. Time for one really quick one, if anyone's got a very quick one. Sir, here. I can't hear you, sorry.
Financial accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah, and mostly through program structures. Look, I'm a program person by, by trade, and a major government program enables you to do that in the UK, for sure.
And all programs are transparent in terms of their accounting. So anything spent over £25,000 within central government is published.
Yeah.
So that's another aspect for that, which maintains that accountability. The clock has gone and it's flashing at me.
But you already told them to do the survey, so I don't have to say it. Everyone does need to exit the room before the keynote. So keynote's going to be back here at 11. A huge thank you to Liam and Philippa for the fantastic presentation. Really amazing. And we'll see you back at 11 for the keynote. Make sure you do the survey. Thank you so much.